Good afternoon, everybody. We will go ahead and bring to order the Washoe County Open Space and Regional Parks Commission meeting for Tuesday, June 7th. Roll call, please.
Doug Doolittle, and he's not here today. Stephanie Chen.
Present.
Timothy Dake.
Present.
Maxwell DiNatale.
Present.
Kevin Joel.
Present.
Nicholas Martin Kearney.
Present.
Darla Lee. I see she's present. I just will give her a sec to unmute herself. Darla, if you can hear us, can you unmute? She is present.
Yes,
Thank you, Darla. Lisa Rode.
I'm present.
Thank you, Lisa. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Commissioner Dake, will you lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Okay. Item 3, do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to item 4, approval of the agenda for the Open Space and Regional Parks Commission meeting of June 7th. I would like to recommend pulling out item 13, election of commissioner, chair, and vice chair, and postpone that to the next meeting.
Lindsay, do we need to vote on that?
No vote would be needed. As the acting chair, Chair Chen can just go ahead and pull the item as long as staff is okay with that.
Okay, is that okay? Okay. And then commissioners, are there any other additions or corrections to the agenda?
I saw a name misspelling. Do we need to do that officially, or should I just tell you?
Sure.
It was the public commenter that we had. His name was misspelled, and he also wrote an email. So if you just, I guess, match those two up, Tom Van Rooten.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. Anything else? Do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
All motion to approve the agenda?
Thank you, Commissioner Dake. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Joel. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Item 5, approval of the minutes for the Open Space and Regional Parks Commission meeting of May 3rd, 2022. Any corrections? Okay. Hearing none. Any public comments?
No public comment.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Joel. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 6, acknowledgement and recognition of park operations staff for their outstanding service and contributions to Washoe County.
Good afternoon. For the record, Colleen Wallace-Barnum, Park Operations Superintendent. I have 2 employees to recognize today for continuous service. Come on up, we have Park Ranger Brett Hartman. Brett gets his 5-year award today. Come on up. Brett, congratulations, 5 years of continuous service. So now he's a vested county employee and you've only got 25 more to go. Brett has been working as a park ranger for us. He worked seasonally. Many of our full-time employees, as you know, we've gone through these recognitions, have started seasonally. And Brett worked for us at Davis Creek Park for a few years and then became a seasonal ranger with a badge and then a full-time park ranger with a badge. And he has been at Bartley Ranch Park as a full-time employee. So thank you, Brett, for your 5 years of service. And I have your award certificate and your pin.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank
Congratulations.
you, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And then I have a second employee that I'd like to recognize. We've got Denise Evans for her 15 years of service with Washoe County. And she's always here. Denise, I'd like to recognize you. So 5 years you spent really as in our administrative offices when we were at Plymouth Street, and she was helping with reservations. And Denise is tremendously capable and helps with lots of different things behind the scenes, such as Park Commission. But she is officially our volunteer coordinator and very capable and just really a pleasure to work with. She steps into many different roles and has over the last 15 years. So Denise, congratulations on your 15 years. Yeah, there you go. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And any comments?
Congratulations, Brett and Denise. Thank you for your years of service. Good ball. All right. We'll go ahead and move on to item 7, Eagle Scout presentation. Do we have one today?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. Item 8, presentation, discussion, and possible recommendation to adopt the Carcion and Kneipa Ranch Recreation Access Plan.
Chair?
Oh.
So I believe, and Lindsay, please correct me if I say anything wrong, but I need to recuse myself from this item due to a potential conflict down the road when this project gets funding and moves forward. I own a company that may bid on some of the work.
And so based on that, I recommend that you go outside while we hear this item and possibly take action on it. And then someone, Denise, or someone else will come grab you when we're done with the item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Joel.
Should I get started or should I wait?
I recommend just waiting a minute until Commissioner Joel is done leaving the room. All right, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Acting Chair Chen, Park Commissioners here and virtual and staff. My name is Sophia Kirschenman, Park Planner with Washoe County Planning for the record. This item is getting ahead of myself. This item is a presentation, discussion, and possible adoption of the Carcion and Kneipa Ranch Recreation Access Plan. I am going to provide a brief overview of the project and the properties, and then I will turn it over to Mr. Ben Fish. He is the project manager for our consultant team from Design Workshop, and he will walk through the plan development process and the plan itself. So first off, we wanted to start with a little bit of regional context for those of you who may not be as familiar with these properties. The Carcion and Kneipa Ranch properties are highlighted here in that sort of yellow goldish color. The Carcion property is to the north or the top of the map, while the Kneipa Ranch property is to the southwest. The areas shown in green are lands that are administered by the United States Forest Service. And then over to the east or the right, there's some land in that kind of muted red color that is owned by the city of Reno. And they do manage a couple of dedicated public access points and trailheads from that property as well. Carcion and Kneipa Ranch are located approximately 5 to 6 miles west of downtown Reno off of I-80. They do provide historic significance to the region as two former working ranches. They also represent some of the last undeveloped public open space along the Truckee River in this particular area. They have a combined area of just over 96 acres, and they're about a quarter of a mile from one another as the crow flies. But as you can see, in order to provide connectivity between the two properties, we would need to cross Forest Service lands as well as the Truckee River. One additional thing to note here on the Carcion property, the main access to Carcion open space is via Mogul Road, and it does require crossing the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. Washoe County does not currently hold a public access easement across those tracks. However, we have engaged with Union Pacific Railroad, and we have actually entered into an agreement with them. Essentially, they will be coming out to conduct a site analysis and essentially assessing the viability of granting Washoe County a public access easement in the future. We really don't know what the outcome of those discussions and negotiations will ultimately be, but it is a key consideration for this project and something that we have been thinking about throughout this master planning effort. Okay, next up, I wanted to highlight kind of the history of how these properties were acquired, when they were acquired, what the intent was behind their acquisition, kind of all that good history stuff. So the first parcel that was part of Canapa Ranch is that one right there, and it was actually acquired in 1997. And that was a joint acquisition between Washoe County and the Nevada Division of Wildlife, or NDOW, with the primary purpose of providing public access for recreation to the Truckee River, and then also to protect critical winter mule deer habitat. Then in 2002, Washoe County acquired a number of additional parcels that were part of the former Canapa Ranch. They're all shown there, highlighted there. In 2008, Washoe County acquired the very first Carcion open space property that is highlighted in that light sort of blue teal color. And then in 2009, Washoe County actually sold all of those parcels to the United States Forest Service under the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act. Washoe County did retain those 3 parcels that were part of Canapa Ranch, specifically with the intent of developing a trailhead and providing formalized public access to Forest Service lands to the Truckee River. And that is reflected in a number of different Washoe County planning documents, the 2010 Verde Area Plan, the 2019 Regional Parks and Open Space Master Plan, and actually another one that's not up there, but also the 2008 Open Space and Natural Resource Management Plan, so lots of plans, have all shown a proposed trailhead specifically on the Canapa Ranch property. So it's an idea that has been in the works and designed for a long time. And then in 2015, Washoe County acquired 2 additional parcels that were part of Carcion open space. And in general, all of these parcels were acquired for similar purposes to provide public access to the river, for fishing, for river play, also to enhance and improve management of vegetation and water quality, and for habitat purposes as well. And I wanted to point out, Washoe County doesn't always go through a full master planning process for a trailhead or for open space properties. But in this particular circumstance, the last Canapa Ranch parcel was acquired, now it's been 20 years ago. And so we wanted to have a more robust public input process and really kind of go back to the community in order to determine what the current community needs are, and also just kind of find out how the public wants these parcels to be developed and managed in the future. Additionally, another key consideration is the implications on our agency partners. We're going to impact Forest Service land if this were to be implemented. One of the parcels is co-owned with NDOW and just other agency partners, state lands, that needed to be involved. And so going through this sort of public input process really allowed an opportunity for key stakeholders also to weigh in and for us to ensure that they were supportive of Washoe County's plans moving forward. And so with that, we put out a request for proposals, and last year we hired Design Workshop to help facilitate the plan development process. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ben Fish. Again, he is the project manager from our consultant team, and he'll walk through the rest of the presentation with you.
All right, thank you. Yes, my name's Ben Fish. I'm a landscape architect with Design Workshop and have been working on recreation and open space projects for over 20 years now. We're based in State Line, Nevada. So like Sophia said, the goals of the project that were developed early on with the stakeholders were to improve the public access to the county-owned parcels, improve the front country access to the Truckee River, improve backcountry access to the Forest Service lands in the Sierra, connect the existing and future trails, connect users to the site's history and the natural resources, Also to manage visitor use, you'll see later in this presentation that there is current visitor use on these sites, so how to appropriately manage that use. Improve the public access and ADA accessibility as well, providing access to the river, for instance, and protect and conserve the natural and historical resources on site. I'm sorry for anybody on Zoom, but I'm gonna use the pointer if I can. So the Carcion property in this photo, this is taken from the mail arrow, if anybody has hiked up to the hill above the properties. The Carcion property outlined here, that's the old Avenza ranch house. These are the old stables. And then the property goes around like this and then to the river. And then also off screen here, this is Highway 80. These are the train tracks. This is the mogul exit. And the informal access right now to the Carcion property is right in this area, just near the old ranch house, which is currently not on Washoe County property. So the access to the properties right now is, again, it's informal. It's not a formalized access to these properties. This is a quick analysis of the Carcion property, again, highlighted in the oranger yellow up here. So river access and focusing on trails is a main component of this. Like I said, there's a lack of formal public access, and easement is required for crossing the railroad in this area from the mogul exit. There is historic buildings that have been assessed. There's a mouthball plan for the old ranch house, and there is the informal parking. There is also connections as you cross over the river to this larger trail system that we'll see on the Canapa property. And so the Canapa property in this photo, just to orient you, this is the NV Energy Bridge that goes across the Truckee River, which is does not have a public easement, does not allow public access as well. There is informal parking in this area. You can see a few cars in there, and that is between the two railroad tracks. So we're trying to solve that issue of providing public access to the property. And then the Canapa property sits through this old farming field and then up into the hills here, and includes some of these dirt roads that are shared with NDOW and then out into the Forest Service. And this text right here is from the Canapa family of how they want to preserve the access for public lands, and will be used in future signage out there. And the Canapa property is, again, the oranger triangle on this one. Again, there's a lack of public trailhead, informal access right now across the NV Energy Bridge, and informal parking in between the two train tracks, two sets of train tracks on this side, just north of the property. So two sites, they're connected, or they're close, but they're not connected with county property. So there is, like Sophia had mentioned, all the green in here is the Forest Service land. And so we met many times with the Forest Service to provide connections between the two properties and to the Forest Service itself. These are pulled from Strava, which is an exercise and data tracking app that has about 30 million users worldwide. So this is crowdsourced data, but it shows heat maps of current use on the properties. And so we just use this as a baseline to really figure out if people are using the properties, where they are going, and how are they accessing the property. So this first one is a walking heat map. So this is people, walking, running, probably a lot of trail running as well on this. So the Carcion property, again, is on the upper part of this map, and then the Canapa property here. You can see a lot of people are crossing the NV Energy Bridge, accessing through the Canapa property, and then going to a lot of Steamboat Ditch. So the white lines here are the hotter sections of the heat map. And then you can see folks getting to this side of the Carcion property, but not being able to cross the bridge and access it towards Mogul. And this next map shows the bicycling heat map. So a little less intensive, but again, still some of the same use patterns. And this next one is pretty interesting. This is river activity, so water access. And you can see it gets really hot by the Mayberry crossing put in. But you can also see in here that people are floating this section of the Truckee River along the Carcion property right in here. So again, we're just using this as a baseline to kind of crowdsource some data and see how people are using the sites. And then with the county and the stakeholders, we developed a series of program elements. This was early on in the process. So again, this is not proposed to be a sports park. It's really a recreation access plan, and these program elements all fall in line with that. So parking and access. So solving the vehicular access, like I was saying, the issues of crossing the NV Energy Bridge and crossing the train tracks. And then also allowing, sorry, was there a question? No, okay. And again, so vehicular access proposed off the Mogul exit for the Carcion property, which would then require that access agreement with Union Pacific Railroad. And then vehicular access is proposed at the end of Doryville Lane. For the Canapa property, it extends to county property, and public access will continue onto the adjacent county parcels as well. Other program elements are the trailhead amenities, such as restrooms, map kiosks, directional and wayfinding signs, rules and regulation signage, interpretive signage, trash receptacles, dog waste stations, seating, and then shade structures. So again, a very kind of passive recreation program proposed out here. Front country trails are what we're proposing in the county-owned properties. So these would be really smooth trails, similar to you see in this upper right-hand photo right here, generally 6 to 10 feet wide. Surface is very smooth. It's not a aggressive hiking trail. That would be the backcountry trails, which we would then connect into from these front country trails that would provide more access to the river and from the parking areas. This is kind of like gradation of front country to backcountry access. And then again, cultural and resource protection. So following the guidelines of the mothballing plan for the old ranch house, looking at what is possible for the stables if those need to be removed or salvaged, and other cultural resources that are on site as well, and how to include that in interpretive and educational signage. And then also the Truckee River access is one of the main draws to the site. So again, providing ADA accessible access to the river, bridge locations, and then also opportunities for non-motorized watercraft put in takeout, like we had seen on those heat maps, to allow people to float along the river and fish the river as well. And then vegetation management is also a big component of the plan. We have a section in here of maintaining or of restoring the sites to native vegetation and perennials, and also stopping the invasion of weeds. And there is currently goats that come out there, I think once or twice a year, and also help with vegetation management. And there's also an overlay, so we worked closely with NDOW and about Department of Wildlife on mule deer habitat, and have recommendations in the plan as well, preserving mule deer habitat in this map. Again, the sites, the Carcion properties right in here, and then the Canapa property on that side. So right in the winter migration of the mule deer. The first public engagement window, I'm gonna scroll to my notes here just so I get the dates right. So this plan is what we presented at the first public meeting on September 9th of 2021. And then we had a subsequent online survey that was live for about a month and a half after that. So this plan, it showed several locations for river access, picnic spaces, small event spaces, trailhead facilities were in multiple locations, parking options. So we had parking options, it's really small, I'm sorry, but close to the river in both locations, in both properties, and then also some that were more in upland areas. And so the parking locations were tied in with trailhead facilities. And then the red lines on here are the proposed new trails. So those would be those front country trails that I mentioned, that 6 to 10 feet wide, kind of, smoother surface trails. And then we also had 3 bridge locations that we analyzed in the document as well. And the bridge locations would be pedestrian only, so a non-motorized bridge across the Truckee River, again, connecting the county parcels and the Forest Service parcel. So we held that public meeting on September 9th of 2021. We then presented these same concepts in an online survey that was held between September 10th and November 1st of 2021. Some of the highlights, we had 183 responses to the online survey. 183 people actually completed the full survey. There was more responses, you'll see if you dig into the details of the plan, people that did not complete the survey, but we take the full completions. And then 47% of the survey respondents, they visit the sites currently on a monthly basis, year-round is what they said. So there is, it kind of, again, talks to the usage of these current sites and the need for improving them. 70% of the survey respondents said that the trail improvements are the most needed for the open spaces. And 63% of them said that their primary activity on the sites is hiking. And we take hiking as, dog walking or just, casual strolls as too. The second public engagement window, we refined the concept plans based on feedback from the public. And this was a webinar that we held on December 9th of 2021. And then we held a subsequent online survey between December 10th and January 18th of 2022 to gauge feedback on these preliminary concepts. So these ones, we refined the concepts. You'll see the parking was moved to the upland areas away from the river. The trails were massaged, and there was a little less program put onto the site, a little less picnic areas. We're a little more sensitive to what was proposed out here. And again, that public webinar was December 9th of 2021. The online survey then went for another month or so after that. And there was also at this period, the second engagement window, additional neighborhood feedback was given to county staff and others. So Washoe County staff also attended a meeting with the Barley Ranch Estates HOA on January 25th and presented the plans. And the plan was also shared at the county and staff meeting in West Truckee Meadows, Verde Township Citizen Advisory Board meeting on January 18th of 2022. During this second engagement window, 78% of the respondents supported the plans as shown. That we had 159 completed online surveys. 34% of the survey respondents said that the connection to off-site trails is a top priority for implementation. And so that was, we asked them all the program elements, and the top program element that was essentially to be phased in was off-site connections to trails. So a lot of people use this as that backcountry connection. 84% of the survey respondents support the plans as shown as well. And then following the second engagement window and then subsequent meetings with stakeholders and adjacent property owners and land managers, the preferred concept plan was developed here. And this one's an overall. So again, the red lines are the proposed trails on both properties. The green areas in here are the parking areas. This is the parking area coming into the Carcion property off of the Mogul exit. Again, working with Union Pacific Road to get an access easement across the railroad, restoring the ranch, mothballing the ranch house, interpreting that. The preferred bridge location is in this location, so upriver, directly connecting to Forest Service land. We've also had an alternate bridge location shown in the preferred plan as well, which is mid-property on Carcion. There is some constraints if you look into the document on erosion and connections of topography on this side of the Carcion property for the bridge location. So that's why our preferred location is currently on this area right here, which also provides a more direct connection to the parking area and the trailhead. On the Canapa Ranch property, so the parking area is off Dorabelle Lane, and then a series of trails connecting up into the Forest Service land and the backcountry, also providing river access downslope from the area here. There was discussions with Sierra Pacific Power and NV Energy on using that access road, and right now that access road is not part of the plan. These are some enlargements of them. So again, the parking area on the Carcion property is in this area directly off the Mogul exit. So coming down that embankment and then parking for, I think I have another enlargement in here, I'm sorry for the exact number of parking spaces. And then again, like I said, ADA access to preferred bridge location, restoring or mothballing the ranch house and a series of front country trails, and really restoring this land within the Washoe County property. The dashed lines are some existing trails and dirt roads that will be assessed, and then the solid lines are new loop trails that allow users to access the land. And on the Canapa property, the parking is a little bit more modest with a trailhead as well to orient users, and then also a series of, so an easier kind of ADA or family-friendly loop that would come through the existing field, and then also, like I said, access down towards the river this way with some small picnic areas along the river under those existing cottonwood trees. And these enlargement plans, so they do need to be vetted to a next level of design, but we tried to get into a level of detail that would really truth the concepts. So that's what these are. So this is showing a parking lot for approximately 42 spaces. 2 of those would be ADA spaces. Location of restroom, map kiosks, and fencing to deter vehicles from accessing anywhere else on the site. And then this side, for the Canapa side, there is a separate access to the public parking area in this area because there is a Tumwa staging easement that was found later in the project. And so honoring that easement and not bringing the public down Dorai Bell Lane, and then not bringing the public, again, down towards the NV Energy Bridge across the Truckee River. So the public would come off the county-owned road and then into this new parking lot with approximately 17 spaces. So a more modest parking lot with some trailer spaces as well. With that, the next steps would be approval from the Washoe County Regional Parks and Open Space Commission, identifying funding sources, start NEPA, the environmental assessment for the properties. Survey work would need to be done, including accurate boundary surveys, title reports, verifying all easements, field survey showing the topography, structures, utilities, vegetation on site, geotechnical investigations for locations of new structures such as the bridge abutments. Hydrological studies would need to be done to review the studies of all drainage and soils and flood zones, and then comply with traffic, emergency management, and Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District requirements, and also recommendations for ranger presence to address illegal activities and homeless encampments on site. With that, I'm going to leave it on this slide with acknowledgements of, so again, all the key stakeholders in here, everyone from the Mogul Neighborhood Association, NDOW, Nevada Division of State Lands, One Truckee River, the U.S. Forest Service, local trail advocates, City of Reno, NV Energy, the Steamboat Canal and Irrigation Company, and the Truckee Meadows Water Authority. And with that, do you have anything else to add? Okay. Sorry, I felt like I just went on.
Thank you, Sophia and Ben. Commissioners, do we have any questions?
So, Ben, my take on this is particularly with the Canapa property. I've been out there, looked at it, and there's right now casual parking where the parking lot is proposed, pretty much. I mean, in general idea. There seems to be some just some casual parking going on there. This really just formalizes what's already taking place on these sites to a certain degree, isn't it?
It does, and that was what we, sorry. Yes, correct, it does, and that's what we've seen in the use maps and also the survey respondents as well, is that it kind of it formalizes and it really regulates as well the uses on site. So right now, most of the parking is actually in the Union Pacific Railroad easement, which isn't a big issue without going into that. So there isn't as much parking right now on the county parcel itself, but there is some, like you said, at the end of Dorai Bell Lane. Yeah.
And then they're coming across on the NV Energy Bridge, which is
Correct. Yeah.
not a good idea. Okay.
Yeah. There's no public easement across that bridge as
Okay.
well.
If I may, Sophia Kirschman, Park Planner. Also, I just wanted to know where you're seeing people currently park on the Canapa property isn't exactly where we're proposing the new parking facilities. So people are generally parking kind of where there's that Tumwa staging easement. There's sort of a dirt lot that's been graded for a long time, and we're proposing some restoration right there. For a couple of reasons. One, to provide a buffer between the Washoe County, public use and public access and that adjacent property owner. And then also not to encroach on Tumwa's access easement. I think we could probably fit both on that parcel, but it's sort of better to have a little bit of buffer in between both of those uses. So the formalized parking would actually be in a new area just to the east of where you're seeing people park right now.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments from the commissioners attending virtually?
I have a couple of questions. This is Lisa. So you said something about homeless encampments, but it was so quick I didn't catch it.
Sophia Kirschman, Park Planner, for the record. Yeah, so one of the main concerns that we heard, I think particularly from the Barley Ranch community that is just west of the Canapa Ranch property, is a real concern about potential future homeless encampments. And I think the note was that if Washoe County were to develop formalized trailheads on either of these parcels, we would also need to have additional staffing approved for maintenance and ranger staffing. And if that were to be the case, we would have regular patrols of the areas to monitor for illegal activities, including homeless encampments, trash, littering, anything along those lines.
Okay, so the idea is then not to have homeless encampments there?
That is correct. At present, there are no homeless encampments that I'm aware of on the Canapa Ranch side. We have seen some evidence of prior homeless activity on the Carcion open space side. Once we started doing some weed treatments and weed management and got the goats out there, we saw a couple of trash sites, and there were actually a few cleanups last year with Keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful to go out there and sort of clean up the sites. And I believe since that time, we haven't seen any new activity related to homeless encampments, but that's always a consideration when you're providing public access.
Thank you. I had another question regarding the second parking lot, and it also went by really fast. It looked like at the back of it, as it was shown on my screen, it said something about trailers, and I didn't really understand that.
I believe that you're referring on the Canapa Ranch property. We have a couple of identified locations for horse trailer parking. We did hear that there is some equestrian use of this trail system and that would be a desired feature on the parking.
Forest trailers, so that would be to bring in equipment or?
Yeah, typically just to bring in the horses themselves. They require sort of a larger area and staging area for horse access.
Oh, okay. I understand. Another question was, what kind of timeline are we shooting for in terms of completion of the project?
In general, these master planning efforts are implemented over a number of years, in kind of the realm of 10 to 15 years for something along these lines. Particularly on this project, we would need to go through an environmental review process in conformance with the National Environmental Policy Act, because we are showing a preferred bridge location that ties onto Forest Service lands, and anything that impacts a federal property does require that level of review. And that process itself can take a couple of years to facilitate and complete. There's also a number of, you kind of heard Ben walk through all the different design elements, geotechnical investigations, hydrological studies. So it takes a long time. Additionally, we don't have funding identified for the project. So these kinds of projects are implemented as funding becomes available. we do have a little bit of funding in this park district that we can utilize as match. And there are a couple of grant opportunities that are available to us to facilitate this kind of a project. In general, it's much less development than something like, at our last meeting, we looked at the Hidden Valley Regional Park Master Plan. That's a much more expensive and much larger park project. Trails are generally less expensive and easier to complete, but things like restrooms and the bridge, those are some high dollar, high ticket items that would take longer to implement.
Okay, thank you. I think the presentation is quite nice and very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you, Commissioner Road. Do we have additional questions or comments?
So, Commissioner Lee, I know there were some comments, public comments from some of the neighbors concerning the potential increase of traffic going into the lower park there, going through the community. And I'm thinking, as I recall, that there is just one entrance, one exit. So there isn't any potential of another entrance other than through that community, correct?
Again, Sophia Kirschman, Park Planner with Washoe County for the record. That was a key consideration. You are correct. There is only one way in and one way out of that community. So there is a lack of secondary emergency egress, which is a key consideration. I did engage with NV Energy and with the Truckee Meadows Water Authority about potentially being able to utilize that bridge and that road for secondary emergency access. The Truckee Meadows Water Authority owns the parcel that road is on, kind of leading down to the bridge. And they actually were supportive and said that if NV Energy were on board, they would be willing to grant Washoe County an emergency access easement. However, despite multiple attempts, NV Energy did not respond to our inquiries about whether they would be willing to provide that emergency egress. There are a number of unknowns associated with that as well. That bridge, there was an assessment done a number of years ago, and quite a bit of restoration would be needed to essentially improve that bridge to current standards and make that safe for emergency egress. We did discuss this with Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District as well, and whether or not they would be willing to manage some sort of access, and that's not part of their purview at this point either. So at this point, I think a secondary access across that bridge is not out of the realm of possibility. It's something we can certainly continue to pursue with NV Energy, but our conversations to this point have led us to believe that it's probably not a viable option moving forward.
Okay. Well, what about through the road going through the community? Is the anticipation of that much of increased traffic going to be so disruptive? I know that's hard to anticipate, but I'm just, I know because of some of the comments, there seemed to be concern about that. So is that going to be addressed any further?
Yeah, so you're correct. That was a key consideration. That was one of the number one comments that we heard from that community as well, was related to traffic and speeding through that neighborhood. I did have some conversations with our traffic engineer about some potential mitigation measures that could be conducted to help slow traffic down and essentially ensure the safety of the community. It's sort of a kind of a reactive policy in that when a situation is experiencing or is being experienced in a neighborhood like that, you can request that we go out there and do a study and kind of assess the speeding and the traffic that is going on in that community in order to determine whether there are any viable options such as speed humps or narrowing of lanes. I think all of those potential mitigation measures are certainly on the table. Additionally, as mentioned, we would, of course, comply with any traffic-related requirements associated with construction of the trailhead and the parking itself. This is a relatively small number of spaces at the end of the community. I don't know whether it would trigger a full traffic analysis or engineering study. I don't believe that it would, but if something like that were to be required, we would absolutely comply with those sorts of studies, and then are also willing to work with the community if there are issues down the road to kind of mitigate some of those issues as well.
Yeah, that would be great, Sophia, especially, to continue working with the community. Thank you. A very, very good presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, are there any public comment for this item?
Yes, I wanted to acknowledge the individuals that submitted public comment by email and also note that their comments were forwarded to the commissioners, and they're also in a PDF that's available on WashoueCountyParks.com, where the Park Commission page is. You can view all of the public comments there along with the agenda. The people that submitted were Barbara Fenney, C.R. Albright, Jean Bechtold, Chris Engstrom, Luke and Denise Bucci, Samuel G. Broyles Jr., Stephanie and James Flowers, and Terry and Karen Melby. Does anyone in the audience have public comment? Okay. And I also want to mention to Barb Santner, who is on Zoom, if you'd like to comment, to please use the raise hand icon, and we'll get to you momentarily. There is a 3-minute timer.
Believe me, I know. Hey, thank you. My name's Terry Melby. I was one of the ones that supported and did a written comment submitted. I hope you read those. I have a couple things to say. And the one thing is the demographics and the user group for the river on the north, on the hikers and the other, they all, almost 99% of them come and use the Mogul exit. The 2 or 3 cars you see parking over by NV Energy, that's the homeowners from the lower Barley Rancho or the upper Warrior subdivision. They drive down there and park, and it's only like 3 people. The plan is a nice development. They did a good job. But there's 2 things that are important to us, and there's a whole section for the Barley Ranch and the upper Warrior division subdivision. But the Carcion plan addresses a lot of the issues on site, meaning the easy accessibility of the Mogul exit. It also focuses in on providing parking area for the current people they park in between the railroad tracks, all the way up and down, because that user group uses that north side. The user group on the south side is almost non-existent. So everyone there currently using that facility is coming off the Mogul exit, and the railroad tracks, they park in between them all the way up and down from the Carcion Ranch all the way down to the bridge. So that would be one positive. And the other positive is that mountain that we referred to with the arrow, all the existing trailheads on the east side are pretty well populated and utilized. On the west side is where they're starting to taper off, and that's a nice barrier and buffer to stop. And then they can come around from the Carcion Ranch from the west or from the east. And the other nice thing about the one plan is tying the Canopy Ranch in with the Carcion, so you can walk along the riverfront, hit down to the Oaks, and then come back up and back in around and loop. We would like to see the meadow that he was referring to the farm field. Well, that was a meadow for grazing cattle. There used to be an old house up there. We'd like to see that meadow preserved as a buffer, because everything to the west is private. Everything to the south is Forest Service. That meadow is used by from the coyotes and their pups to the deer, the mountain lions, and the bear. There's a bear den up there. And they use that meadow all the time. As soon as you put a parking lot there and a trailhead on your little sliver of land, you've compromised the integrity of that. You have not enhanced it. And then there's a really steep drop down to the bottom. It would be nice if it could be developed like the Crystal Peak Park, where if you come down and park down there, I mean, that would be, but the way it is right now, it's kind of like a compromise. We're not dealing with the railroad, we're not dealing with NV Energy, but we can try to sort of do something. If it could be developed in one of the earlier plans, show the trail system without going through that area, you'd address all the homeowners' concerns and I guess my 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? for public comment? We could just have you write your name down for us when you're done.
Write it down where?
You can just come visit us when you're finished.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Paul DiMartini. I had no intention of saying anything here today, so I'm a resident of Barley Ranch. I happen to also be the president of the Barley Ranch HOA. We responded previously to the early, maybe the second, maybe both of them. And the general consensus, but not everyone, in Barley Ranch, which is 68 homeowners, is they're not in favor of this project simply because of the concerns stated. Traffic, increased crime. You talk about enhancing things by putting a parking lot and a bathroom on the campus side. You're encouraging people to come. Now, if those respondents were the correct number I saw there, 184 and 159, 80%, I'd be curious what the budget for this project is, just on the campus side. And why do we want to spend the money if you had less than 200 respondents to your surveys, 159 the second time? I'm not even sure what the purpose of it is. People, as someone stated, both the presenters and Terry, people are already coming there and using that, and it's very few people. I mean, I saw the map tracking thing, but are you sure this is even a good use of public funds to expand over there for how many people? So I'd be curious what the proposed budget is, what the proposed use is, and what the justification for even spending the money is. So, but generally speaking, I like the plan. Now, if my wife was here, she'd be up here telling you that she didn't want the plan at all. But I agree with Melby's position that the plan generally is nice with access to the river, but we certainly don't think you need the parking lot and the restrooms on the campus side for a few people to come to. And if you develop the much more used north side at the Carcion entryway at Mogul, you accomplish everything that you're trying to do and possibly cut your budget in half. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hand icons on Zoom, so I think that's it.
Thank you. And then commissioners, I'll open it one more time. Are there any additional questions or discussion after hearing public comments that you'd like to share?
Well, I'm a little concerned about the meadow and the use by wildlife of the meadow. Are there any alternative plans to disrupting that meadow?
Sophia Kirschman, Park Planner for the record. So at this point, this is what we're proposing is before you today. I will say that these are conceptual in nature. So while there is a trail kind of shown in that meadow area, official design happens down the road once we hire a trail contractor and kind of assess the site conditions. At that time, we can certainly look at how to avoid the most environmentally sensitive areas, do surveys for potential wildlife habitat or vegetation communities, and try to locate the trails in the best possible locations. There's also a consideration, we do have two trails one trail sort of adjacent to an existing road that's utilized by the Steamboat Irrigation and Canal Company. One comment that has been brought up in the past was whether or not we could co-locate the trail on that existing road. I think that's another opportunity we could potentially look at when we get into design in order to minimize impacts, since that's already a disturbed area. But again, some of that further design and further analysis would be happening at a later stage.
Thank you.
And then I just had a question, Sophia. So I guess from my understanding, yes, this is a conceptual, it's a master plan. If later on funding is found and, you can proceed with some of the steps, would the design or, components of some of the projects come back to the board for additional review? Or how does that work?
It depends on the situation. Typically not. In this case, what you're approving today is sort of the elements. Do you support parking? Do you support a bathroom, a restroom? Do you support these trails? When it gets down to design phase, we typically move forward on those elements as funding arises. However, certain things do come back before this board. If it were to be partially funded with grant funding, that typically goes before our board for approval. So there are other opportunities. If there was an environmental review, there could be some potential opportunities for input for this board at that time as well. So I do believe there could potentially be more opportunities for input down the road, but typically it doesn't always happen. It depends on the situation.
Okay, thank you.
This is Commissioner Dake. I did have a question on, while these properties are in close proximity, they have unique features that really make them independent. Is there, what drove, maybe I missed it in Ben's presentation, but what drove the design work on this master plan as a joint property, if you will? Why were they not looked at completely independently?
For a number of reasons. So one, I think on the Carcion side, we have that huge constraint with the railroad, and we are actively pursuing that. And we really hope to get that legal public access. But if that doesn't pan out, and if we're not able to secure public access, then we have no other way to provide a legal, safe way for the community to get there. And so looking at these properties concurrently and as part of one property allows us to look at multiple options for connecting the parcels, and providing access from the Canapa Ranch side to the Carcion side if we needed to. Also, just given their proximity, they're so close to one another, and really what you do on one could have potential implications on the other, especially if there's a bridge across the Carcion side, you're probably going to end up directing some sort of folks over to the Canapa Ranch side. So it's just nice to provide connectivity between different public lands. We try to do that as much as possible when we can. And then I think you're right that they do serve different functions. On the Carcion side, we see a lot of fishermen. I mean, that's a number one kind of use at present. But I think if there were better access and if more people knew about it, we might have more use. And one of the things that we are trying to do as part of this whole process and looking at both of these properties is to manage visitor use from other properties. Right now, our river parks, DeRoscar, Mayberry, Crystal Peak, other river parks that are in this area are incredibly busy. In the summertime, you see people parking down the road, and there's a big desire for additional river access. Both of these properties could provide additional river access and help to disperse some of that use from other locations, even from the Hunter Creek Trailhead is nearby. So we're just really trying to look at this in a more holistic way. How are we managing all of our properties kind of in this whole area, and what makes sense for this entire community? So that's why we looked at them together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, this is Commissioner Dinatelli. I have a quick question. While in theory I support concepts and portions of this plan, I am sensitive to the folks that don't want a parking lot and don't want more traffic and overdevelopment. How would we go about supporting this plan with more modifications in place that sort of cater to the homeowners down there?
Absolutely. This board is welcome to recommend approval with modifications and identify those modifications that you would like to see. I will say we have reviewed and thought about all the concerns that have come up, and sort of the compromise that we proposed was to do a smaller parking area and then to further work with the community on some potential traffic studies and traffic speed considerations, speed humps, that sort of thing. We have heard mixed reviews about that, about some of the community members have seemed to be supportive of kind of traffic calming devices. Some have said that they're not supportive of that. So I think there's some more work that would need to be done to further, figure out exactly what the best path forward might be. Another key consideration that I do want to mention is that we're in the position of trying to anticipate and accommodate for future growth. And so even though these properties aren't maybe heavily used at present, one, I think not everybody in the community knows that they exist and knows that they provide public access. And two, the city of Reno has recently approved a very large development just to the west of Barley Ranch, and there's going to be a lot of additional need for recreation. And given that, we are anticipating that there will be more pressure on our public lands and our access points and our river access points. And so we're trying to think about how to accommodate the future growth and future needs as well. But of course, it is this board's purview to recommend approval, denial, or approval with modifications.
I appreciated the comment about perhaps treating these as two different properties. A couple of people have commented on that now, and I feel like that makes sense. Could that be a modification to the plan?
I'm not sure that I understand what that would look like.
I can't say I understand it exactly either, but there are two different areas, right? So we have two different parking lots proposed.
That is correct.
So there's been a suggestion that maybe this should be treated as two different areas instead of one area.
This board could certainly recommend approval of the improvements as shown on one of the properties and not the other. That might be what you're considering.
Well, which is the property that has the meadow?
So the Canapa Ranch property it's a former working ranch, so it was used for cattle in the past, and it is the one with the meadow area. I believe that's what you're referring to.
Okay. Thank you.
May I ask another quick follow-up question on that location? Is that also the site of the Avanzino Ranch?
The Avanzino Ranch House is located on the Carcion open space property. You
Okay.
can see it from I-80 as you're driving by. There's a big ranch house there.
Thank you for the clarification for me. Thank you.
I know, it's a little confusing with the two so close by.
Okay, so this item is up for action, and hearing everyone's thoughts, it sounds like, I guess I'm not quite sure how we want to move forward as a board. Does someone want to make a motion to approve with modifications, or how would you like to go about so we could continue with this item?
This is Commissioner Dake. With respect to the folks at Barley Ranch and that live along that south side of the river, this is a conceptual design to work towards. This is to be a master plan of something that can be built in the future. As Sophia mentioned, there's no funding for it, there's no schedule for it. This is a plan. There will be more people coming to the Canepa property, casually. I've already seen more people at the Carcion property. It's a great fishing spot, great fishing access, both properties. I'm going to make a recommendation that we approve this. This has been through a number of iterations now, and it's been improved on several times. And you can kind of, from an engineering standpoint, keep beating on it, but at some point you have to say, this is good enough to start planning towards. That doesn't mean you're going to build it. It's going to mean you're going to plan towards it, and it can be changed later on. Or you build part of it later on as funding is available. I'm going to motion that we approve this plan as it stands.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Do we have a second or discussion or questions?
I would second it, Commissioner Lee.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Okay, we'll go ahead and go into a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
we'll document that.
Just to confirm, is that Commissioner Road?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, motion carries.
The reason I'm opposed is because it doesn't appear that anybody has to come back for further approvals if we go ahead and approve this. And there are some concerns about treating the two properties as one. That's my concern.
Thank you, Commissioner Road. Okay. All right, so motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. And I'd also like to acknowledge all of our community members who provided public comment. Thank you for your time.
And now that this item is over, can a member of staff go grab Commissioner Joel? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll wait for Commissioner Joel to get seated before we move on to the next item. All right, we'll continue with item 9, Program of the Month, project highlights from the Integrated Vegetation Management Program, presented by the Natural Resource Planning AmeriCorps team.
Hello, my name is Claudia Spaghetti, and I am an AmeriCorps member for the Open Space Program. And I'm here to give a little update on the Rancho San Rafael Pollinator Garden that is currently in progress and hopefully shall be completed and available for public use by the end of the summer. And starting off, we have a couple pictures of our completed honeybee garden. And just to kind of introduce the project and its intentions, we want to talk about why we care about pollinators in the first place. And when we say pollinators, we mean a variety of different insect species, as well as hummingbirds, several other birds. And in general, pollinators are very economically and ecologically important, and they contribute to about $18 billion of annual crop revenue through crop production every year. And pollinator presence is also strongly related to plant diversity. So another reason we're focusing on supporting our pollinators is to support our native resilient perennial plant communities. And to do that, we have this pollinator garden plan for a former pasture area at Rancho San Rafael. And this plan includes a seating area and a general area for people to congregate, and it facilitates social interactions in the area. And it also includes several different garden plots appealing to different pollinators that we're hoping to attract to the site. That includes hummingbirds and honeybees, as well as native bees and butterflies. And it is located next to the urban farm demonstration garden that is currently also being managed at Rancho San Rafael. And relating to our integrated vegetation management goals, the goal of this project is to establish strong perennial plant communities, and to do that we are using both native and adaptive species. And in order to create those resilient communities, we are going in and restoring a formerly disturbed site that was not contributing very much to our pollinator supportive environment. And so to do that, we're going back in and we're establishing some native and adaptive species to fortify the area and make it more appealing to native pollinators. And going into some pictures, this is an ongoing project that has not yet been completed, but is hopefully going to be done by the end of this season. But a lot of progress has already been undertaken with the help of many volunteers. And at this point, we have planted trees at our site. We have also created seed beds where we have planted several mixes of native wildflower species to help attract our pollinators. And this was done with the help of our Rancho San Rafael rangers, as well as Joanne Loden, our natural resource manager at the Parks Department. We have also begun progress creating walkways and social areas in the site, and have at this point finished laying out our seed beds. And this is a very early picture, so it has only gotten better from here. We've also had volunteer groups from various different organizations, including Tesla, and at this point they have helped lay out our trails and improve the site. And we partnered with Moana Nursery to obtain native and adaptive plants that we have been installing into the site, and that is currently where we're at in this process. And once again, we've relied a lot on volunteers, a lot of community engagement, and there's a lot of excitement in the community for this project to be completed, and we've seen that with people coming out and helping, and just people seeing the work that we're doing and expressing their admiration and their excitement. And at this point, we have our honeybee garden section completely installed. And we have already begun to experience visitation by pollinators, which has been the most exciting development so far. And overall, I feel as though that this project is headed in a great direction and will be of great service to our community, both our pollinator community and public community. And so overall, this project does a whole lot in terms of enhancing our open space by creating a community engagement site for folks through the Hive Outdoor Classroom, where we'll have a shade structure in our seating area that is surrounded by the garden. And this will facilitate social and educational events at the park. And it also helps bring attention to other developments happening at the park, such as the Urban Farm Demonstration Garden that is located right next to it. And yeah, that is all I have for now. As I have said, it's an ongoing project, but I believe we're already on a great track to achieving those goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Very informative. Commissioners, do you have any questions or any remarks? Okay.
I absolutely love it. I think it's wonderful. Good job.
Great job. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Bales, and I'm a AmeriCorps member. I've been serving here since September, and my time will be up in August. And I'll be talking to you about our Crystal Peak Restoration Plan as well as our Bartley Ranch Restoration Plan.
Commissioner, oh, sorry. Commissioner Lee, can I speak?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, just briefly. I love this project. Good presentation, and I'm really eager to see the completion of it, which I think was it said this year? It's supposed to be done by the end of the summer, maybe?
Yes, our pollinator garden should be finished hopefully by the end of the summer. Well, definitely by
Great.
the end of the summer.
I did have a chance to dig and plant a few of the plants the other day, so it's a very worthy project. Thank you.
So, our Crystal Peak restoration plan has, according to the planting plan of 2021, last year, we have now completed 3 out of 4 of the planting zones of our Crystal Peak upper parking lot restoration. The species in which we planted there have included rabbit brush, sagebrush, and bitterbrush. The last planting section will be trees, as you can see in the oranger area, in this kind of half circle. We've had many volunteer plantings at the Crystal Peak Restoration in our upper parking lot area. We've had groups come out in May of 2021 as well as April of 2022. This spring in April, we had the Keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful Great Community Cleanup Day, and their job was to plant 250 native perennial species. Plants, sorry. We had only 3 species. For our planting events, it takes just about as much time to prepare for the planting event as it does for the actual event, if not more time to prepare. We did such things as we took 250 pin flags and placed them out in the approximate location we wanted our volunteers to plant, as well as laying out our 3/4 inch tubing for our drip irrigation system. And then during the event, we started plugging the plants with drip irrigation to help let them grow better. We've also done other restoration of native species at Crystal Peak. In the fall of 2021, we spread native perennial grass seed mix on the Fisherman Trail side of Crystal Peak. And we also removed invasive species such as spotted knapweed. And in the picture, you can see a group from June of 2021 pulling spotted knapweed, also on the Fisherman Trail side of Crystal Peak. And depending on the type of weed that you are dealing with, this is according to our integrated vegetation management plan, depending on the type of weed you are trying to remove dictates the way in which it can be removed. So weed removal can be done by physical, mechanical, or chemical ways. The complex perennial weeds such as perennial pepperweed, also known as tall whitetop, that requires chemical treatment to properly get rid of it. And other species such as annuals and biennials can be removed by pulling, digging up, or grazing them down to prevent future seeds from falling. Now, to go on to our Bartley Ranch restoration plan. In November of 2011, there's a wildfire that burned nearly half of Bartley's 56 acres. And post-fire rehabilitation is important for the stabilization of soils and the establishment of perennial vegetation. After a wildfire has burned through an area, soils can be destabilized and subject to erosion. In order to prevent excessive erosion of soils, seeding followed by mulching the burn sites will help to establish native plant growth and soil stabilization. Mulching after seeding provides a protective cover over seeded areas as well as a suitable environment for seed germination. And seeding the first fall after a fire is important to stabilize the site prior to potential reinvasion by invasive species. A slow-moving and severe fire and the combustion of vegetation materials can create a waxy coating on the soil surface, causing the soil to become hydrophobic and repel water. So in order to change that, the soil needs to be raked and broken up to get past the hardened soil layer and increase infiltration. Since the fall and winter of 2020, there have been multiple volunteer groups for the planting of nearly 3,000 native perennial plants at Bartley Ranch. We've had 13 different species, which include basin wild rye, bitterbrush, crested wheatgrass, field bindweed, globe mallow, Indian ricegrass, Palmer's penstemon, and many others. Our notable volunteer groups that have participated is a Great Basin Institute crew, and they came in the fall of 2020. And then we've had multiple other volunteer groups, as well as the KTMB Great Community Cleanup Day this past April. So at Bartley Ranch in September of 2021, we did a plant inventory and GPS marking of all of the previously planted plants. And we have had a 67% success rate in the ones that have lived. In spring of 2022, we went out and spent some time checking and repairing the drip irrigation, as well as weeding around our established plants and marking the plant replacement for volunteer events. The plant replacement was volunteers, was at the Great Community Cleanup Day in April, and the volunteers were doing plant replacements for the plants that did not survive. We suspect that these plants did not survive due to either the soil condition, a broken piece of drip irrigation, meaning that they did not get properly watered, or simply not being planted properly. We place a drip irrigation on our restoration plantings to help establish a strong root system, and eventually the irrigation can be removed to let the plants grow on a more natural timeline. And our future planned work is to continue doing weed inventory of our parks and open spaces. We are currently working our way through the list of spring and summer plantings. It is important for us to go out at different times of the year to take weed inventory because different weeds decide to show up at different times of the year. We also are planning some more weed removal sites because it is important to remove weeds. Our other future plans are to finish the Rancho San Rafael Pollinator Garden, which should be done by the end of the summer. And our additional projects that we have talked about for the future involve planting trees at the upper parking lot of Crystal Peak and possibly adding another planting section at Bartley Ranch in the restoration plan. In addition to adding another planting section, it was discussed that we added a water tank at the top of the hill to have a more energy efficient gravitational drip system for our plants. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you both for working on these projects. I think that it takes a lot of time and dedication, so great work. Are there any commissioners that have any other comments or?
I do have a question. The 67% survival rate, like how does that compare to other projects or other techniques? Do you have any information on that? 67% sounds pretty good to me, but you said it like it wasn't maybe that good?
I think it's a good success rate. I unfortunately do not have any other data on like the success rate of our other planting areas, but plants are pretty happy now.
Yeah, that's 2/3 of them made it.
Yeah.
If I may, Chair. For the record, Eric Rupp with Washoe County Community Services Department. I just wanted to introduce our natural resource planner, Joanne Loudon. So she's sitting there quietly in the back, and she runs this program that you all are seeing this presentation on. We'd be remiss if we didn't introduce and recognize her efforts. So she's got a very small team for the many thousands of acres that Washoe County is responsible for, and she does an incredible job. So, thank you.
Thank you for your work in leading this project and taking on AmeriCorps. Very helpful.
Yes, thank you, Joanne. Great work.
All right. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item 10, discussion on canceling the July 5th, 2022 Park Commission meeting. I think this was put on here because in the past we've had, it's been close to not meeting quorum due to this meeting falling on the 3-day weekend after 4th of July. So I think today we're gonna just discuss whether commissioners, are we okay with canceling, or do we want to try and meet and see if we can have quorum for this meeting? Any thoughts or questions?
This is Lisa Rhodey, and I'm fine either way.
Okay, thank you.
I am also fine either way.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Dake. If there's a quorum there, let's be there.
Okay, perfect. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay, so it sounds like we want to go ahead and this is up for possible action. So would someone like to make a motion to not cancel the meeting? Is that the route we would go, or?
I'll motion not to cancel.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll second that.
perfect. Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so motion passes. We will not cancel the July 5th meeting, and we'll hopefully have a quorum. Thank you, everybody. Okay, item 11, Parks Reports.
Hello, for the record, Colleen Wallace-Barnum, Park Operations Superintendent. Just wanted to highlight a few important events coming up. So it's our busy time, right? It's our growing season. We're out there. Park staff is working hard. This is when we are very, very active with lots of programming and volunteers. Park visitation increases substantially, events in the park, so it is a dynamic environment. We are working 7 days a week, sometimes from 6 a.m. to midnight. Hawkins Amphitheater show tonight, so we've got staff around the clock. So just want to make sure I thank everybody out there that's working hard and keeping things going in our parks. So in the South region, Bowers Pool passed its inspections, so we are excited to open the pool this coming Saturday, June 11th, and it will be open every day through the summer until school begins up again, and I think it's in the middle of August. Sorry, I don't have that exact date, but it'll be open daily. We also have the splash pad features going to be installed hopefully next week, and then we can open that the following weekend, so we're really looking forward to that. That was supported generously through a grant from the William and Pennington Foundation. We have had several ranger walks going on in our park, so most of our information, if anybody's interested in attending, is on our webpage. We have scrolling information, and we have a calendar that's updated regularly by Denise Evans. And upcoming events, just wanted to make sure you know Bowers Mansion, it's not really upcoming, it's current. We have it open 4 days a week now for tours. So it'll be Friday through Mondays, starting Monday the 13th. So we will have the Bowers Mansion open for tours those 4 days, which is exciting. So that's actually an increase of 2 days. We were only open on Saturdays and Sundays, and now we're expanding it out on Fridays and Mondays. For the North region, probably our biggest highlight to provide you all is that Rancho San Rafael Regional Park has its 40th anniversary. And we have a 40th anniversary an exhibit in the May Museum that's open Wednesday through Sunday when the museum is open to the public, and you're welcome to walk in and take a look at that exhibit. It's in the gallery, so it's free. It highlights really the timeline of the park, and then we have a full day event on June 25th. Please visit the webpage if you want further details, but it'll be a fun day starting at 6:30 a.m. with a balloon launch if the weather holds for us, and then all the way to 3 p.m. with lots of different public partners that we've had over the years that are just really excited to celebrate Rancho San Rafael as just a really wonderful park in the middle of our community. And then I wanted to also highlight volunteer services. We actually reached twice our total number of hours for the month of April, for 2022, and that we finally hit a pre-pandemic number, which was lovely. So it gives us some hope for our future volunteer hours continuing to increase, and we're so thankful for those volunteers that come out and support events like our AmeriCorps. We're discussing a lot of those volunteer planting events and those kind of things. So does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
I do, Colleen, and I wasn't sure if it was coming up later on, and if it is, but I have some questions on the Silver Knowles Park irrigation issue. Is that coming up later? You'll cover it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen and team, for planning all these fun events. Okay, so moving on to item 12, Director's Report.
Good afternoon. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager and Director of the Community Services Department. Just a couple of things for you all this afternoon. Wanted to go over a few board actions that have occurred in the last couple of months. So as you'll recall, last time I was here discussing possible adoption of the budget, the board did indeed adopt the budget for fiscal year 23, which includes quite a big impact to the parks program here within Washoe County. So super excited that that has occurred, not only on the employee side, equipment side, increases to some of the supplies budgets, but also on the capital improvement side with some park playground improvements and a few other things. So really excited about the amount of work now that we've got to go out and actually put in the ground for our community. But I think it was a long time coming for some additional assistance with our staffing associated with parks. So that was really good. The board also held a first reading and then a second reading and adopted the changes to Chapter 95. So again, this is the ordinance that our county code section that governs parks and open space. One of the provisions in there has to deal with numbers of meetings per year. And so I think after we have a new chair instilled at maybe the July meeting, if we've got a quorum, we can talk with that chair about kind of how we want to move forward to make sure that these meetings are meaningful to everybody so that we can assure a quorum. That was part of the reason we wanted to discuss that. And so I think that was really good. It also does a lot of good things for our staff out in the field, gives them some more authority to do some things, some of those things that we are constantly plagued with either dogs or off leash, trails use, all of those types of things. So really good impact for our employees there. The board also approved the lease for the Paul Agrarian Institute. This is over on Mayberry, as you'll recall. Recommended the approval of the golf management license for Kalamazoo Golf to extend out at Wild Creek. Just an update on Wild Creek. We are continuing to create the agreements necessary to fully transfer that property over to First Tee. Our district attorney representative, Ms. Liddell, is keeping me on task with that. And so we're shooting to get something before the board. There are a few agreements that need to go back to the Board of County Commissioners, and I'm hoping to get concurrence with City of Sparks and First Tee to have that done in July so we can get that project taken care of. First Tee is extremely excited, ready to go, do some fundraising and revamp that course. The board also approved the slope and landscape easement out at Lazy Five Regional Park. So that was taken care of. And then one of the last things that they did was adjust the current pay scale for our seasonal lifeguard positions. As many of you probably understand, we are having a hard time hiring pretty much any burger joint this day and age, and flip burgers for $15 to $17 an hour, and sitting outside sometimes isn't as attractive. So we were able to do that, and I think we're doing okay with our seasonal hiring. Certainly if you have any young people in your lives or know of friends, family that are looking for seasonal jobs, send them on over to the parks and we can get them set up. Commissioner Joel, you'd mentioned Silver Knowles Park. I just provided some correspondence to the Board of County Commissioners related to Silver Knowles Park. This is an unfortunate situation whereby we are reliant on a fairly small water company off the Red Rock up in Silver Knowles. They have had some struggles with arsenic in their water, and they've been dealing with the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection, creating a filter system to treat the arsenic. Struggling with this for about the last 5 to 7 years. I've been involved with trying to work through this. In January, they raised the rates to a point where they're 5 to 6 times greater than we would pay with any of the other water purveyors for simply irrigating our parks. And so we had to make the unfortunate decision to disconnect water service because even if we used 0 gallons of water or up to 35,000 gallons of water, it would cost us the same amount as irrigating the entire park last year. So working with staff to determine whether we can drill a well out there and provide water in the short term specific for that park. We do have some groundwater rights that we can utilize. That will take care of the irrigation for the short term being 5 to 6 years while we're working with Lifestyle Homes, who has a housing subdivision to the north of the park, where we've already spoken with them about bringing Tumwa service water from their development to the park to have a better sustainable park experience for the water up there in Silver Knolls. We think this is actually going to help the Silver Knolls Water Company as well. They have told us in the past that the amount of water that the park utilizes is what's drawing the arsenic out of into the aquifer and causing the issues they've got with their drinking water. So hopefully by making this move, we'll actually solve or help improve the situation with their arsenic issues with the water. So we will continue to monitor the health of the trees. If we need to, we'll go up there and hand water those trees with a water buffalo or a water truck. We do not want to lose the asset due to this unfortunate series of events. So that's what I have for you on the update for Silver Knolls Park. So with that, I will open up to any questions.
Thank you. And that was kind of my concern is like, because once you lose some of the mature, vegetation there, it's difficult to get back. Are there any options for reclaimed water? I know the American Flats pipeline is not too far away. I'm not sure exactly where that's going, but is that potentially an option to irrigate with the reclaimed water?
Yeah, I mean, part of the, a lot of it hinges on what the Lifestyle subdivision is going to do for their irrigation water, whether it's Tumwa or whether they can work out something with the city of Reno for reclaimed water. Certainly, we will utilize the most appropriate water for irrigation of that park as we move forward. But certainly, we just simply cannot afford the water price as it's set today from the Silver Knolls Mutual Water Company.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we're postponing item 13 to the next meeting. Moving on to item 14, presentation, discussion, and training on open meeting law.
Hello, Lindsay Liddell, Deputy District Attorney. So I wanted to give you guys a presentation on open meeting law because we have about 4 new commissioners now, and this is a pretty substantial body of law that applies to you, has some pretty serious consequences if it's not followed. So I will just go ahead. So the legislative intent of open meeting law is that deliberations and board actions be conducted openly. It encourages transparency and public participation, and all of the statutes that do apply to your meetings are found in NRS Chapter 241, should you ever be interested in reading them. So open meeting law applies to all meetings of a public body at which deliberations take place or an action may occur. The primary pillars of the open meeting law are that we do have a public body, that there is a meeting, that there's notice for that meeting, and that there's an agenda for that meeting. So that kind of explains why we have the agendas the way we have. We have minutes that you need to vote on, and the agendas, you'll notice that we receive them at least 3 business days in advance. That's required by law. So a public body is defined as any administrative, advisory, executive, or legislative body of the state or local government that either expends or disperses or is supported in whole or in part by tax revenue, or that advises or makes recommendations to an entity that expends, disperses, or is supported in whole or in part by tax revenue, which is you all, the Parks Commission. You are an advisory body to the Board of County Commissioners, which is supported by tax revenue and expense and disperses both. It includes any board, commission, committee, subcommittee, or any subsidiary thereof. A meeting is defined as a gathering of the members of a public body at which a quorum is present to deliberate towards a decision or to take action on a matter over which the public body has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. So this is important because really the topic of what you're discussing can lead to whether something occurs to whether something becomes a meeting. So if you're in a social situation where you have several parks commissioners, but you're not talking about Parks Matters, that's not a meeting. But once Parks Matters come up, it could become a meeting, and it could be a violation of open meeting law. A quorum is generally a simple majority of the public body, but sometimes specific statutes require a different number. So one thing to note is that the legislature has specifically said that serial communication, electronic communication, must not be used to circumvent the spirit or the letter of the open meeting law. So that means things like reply all, emails, or several texts, things like that. So I always recommend to avoid replying all, avoid a group text with your commissioners, things like that. And then the other thing to complicate this is something called the walking quorum. And that is a series of gatherings at which there's less than a quorum present, but the topic of that conversation or what one public body member said during that first conversation is then brought up in another conversation with additional public body members. So Commissioner Dake, if you were on the phone with Commissioner Joel and Commissioner Chen talking about a potential parks item and how you're going to vote, that's not a quorum. But then if you were to communicate with additional commissioners after that and say, hey, well, Commissioner Chen's going to vote this way and Commissioner Joel's going to vote this way, how are you going to vote? That's what's considered a walking quorum, and that would violate open meeting law. There are some exceptions for attorney-client communications within open meeting law. One of those is to receive training on open meeting law. So technically this training could occur in private, but it's just easier with everyone's schedules to do it here. And to receive information regarding any potential legal issue, litigation, things like that. That can be done outside of an open meeting. But still, if I send you all an email, and I generally try to do it blind CC'd, but if I didn't do that, I recommend avoiding hitting reply all. And so there is a social function exception that if commissioners or public body members are at some kind of a social function, and like I described earlier, do not mention the topic over which their public body oversees, that is not a meeting. So if you have, if you find yourself in a social function and you're talking with a fellow commissioner or multiple commissioners, please be careful to avoid talking about Parks Matters, because that could turn into a meeting, which would be a violation of open meeting law. So one of the things that's required is a notice that the meeting is going to occur. It needs to include the date, time, and location. It must be posted 3 working days prior to the meeting by 9 a.m. So if that notice has not been posted, then the meeting can't occur. The agenda itself must contain clear and complete statements of the topics to be considered. The commission may only discuss items that are present on the agenda. And so generally, if the discussions start to veer away from the agenda, I might jump in and recommend that the commissioners just stick to the agenda, and that's why I'm doing that. There's also a requirement for possible action notations if there's going to be an action occurring on an item. If there was a mistake and there isn't that for possible action language, no action can take place. So you're only allowed to take action when that notation is present on your agenda. And so an action is just a decision, commitment, promise, or affirmative vote. There's also certain legal requirements for the public comment periods that we have. You can either have a block at the beginning, both the beginning and the end, or you can have a block at the beginning and during each action item. And generally, I recommend that whoever is running the meeting just go ahead and do both for multiple reasons. One, to just encourage that public participation. And other issues have come up where maybe we lose a quorum or we run out of time. We're not able to get to that end public comment period. But because we've already done that during the action items, we're covered under open meeting law. There can also be certain restrictions. As you've seen, we have a 3-minute restriction on public comment. The restrictions that can be placed cannot restrict a speaker's viewpoint. So even if a speaker says something you don't agree with, that individual is still permitted to communicate whatever it is they want to communicate. However, if a speaker becomes disruptive and affects the safety or just the order of the meeting, that individual can be removed, and it would be the chair or whoever is running the meeting who would take that action. Another thing, because we have that requirement for items that will be discussed to be placed on the agenda, if a member of the public provides comment about something that is not on the agenda, the commissioners or public body members cannot discuss the topic of that item. Individual commissioners can respond directly to the public commenter, but discussion amongst yourselves I would not recommend. Unless the topic is on the agenda, then go ahead. Certain requirements for minutes, I won't necessarily go through all of these, but it's here if you need it, and as well as the citation, so that's kind of one of the things you're looking for when you are approving the minutes each meeting. Another requirement is that the meetings either be audio recorded or transcribed, which is why you'll see Denise record every meeting. And so if an action takes place in violation of the open meeting law, a few years ago, the Nevada legislature changed the law to allow corrective action because if an action takes place that violates open meeting law, it's void. So this is a way that the public body can avoid that and also avoid some other consequences. So the corrective action should take place or needs to take place within 30 days. And if we need to do that, I will go through that with you as far as how to do that. And if the corrective action is taken, the AG's office may elect not to prosecute the open meeting law violation. And so the Attorney General's office is the body who both enforces it, open meeting law, and investigates open meeting law and prosecutes potential open meeting law violation complaints. Generally, if the AG's office receives a complaint, it will decide whether it wants to open a formal investigation. If it does that, it will inform the public body, and so you will know about it. The public body or public body member also has an opportunity to respond. And then after an investigation is complete, the AG's office will issue a finding, either that a violation occurred or that it did not. If a violation did occur, there is a legal requirement that the public body acknowledge that. Another thing that the Attorney General's office could do is bring a civil action against a public body or a public body member to void an action or to obtain an injunction to prevent future violations. And private citizens may also bring these civil actions, so be aware of that. And as I said, an action taken in violation of open meeting law is void. It can also subject violators to administrative fines, and commissioners would be personally liable for those fines. Serious violations could lead to misdemeanor criminal charges, so fairly severe consequences for violating open meeting law and blatantly ignoring it. So that's why it's important, and that's why I am presenting today. But there is an there is an exception for an open meeting law violation that occurs as a result of legal advice. So if, as a commissioner, you have a question regarding open meeting law and myself or another attorney assisting you says go ahead, based on whatever legal analysis we provide, that would kind of shield you from criminal penalties. So if you have any questions, please use the assigned DA, which right now is me. I'm happy to answer any questions you have via email, phone, or in person. And this is just a few sources of information if you want to learn more. Like I said, NRS Chapter 241. There's also an open meeting law manual that the Attorney General's office publishes, and opinions that the Attorney General's office publishes. Are there any questions? Okay, well, thank you. Oh, Commissioner Joel?
So how would we handle like I guess maybe would it be a social event, but if we went to like, let's say a park grand opening or something where we were all there and present, are we like not allowed to talk to each other, or is that considered a social function?
So that would be a social function, but I would not recommend that you talk to each other about parks matters, which I understand would, in that specific hypothetical, it would be difficult not to. I would recommend avoiding a quorum present at something like that, because it would be so difficult. But if you did find yourself at a function like that, I would recommend just not talking about parks matters.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Moving on to item 15, Commissioner request for future agenda items.
Chair, I have one possible one. So there is a parcel out by the Stead Airport that is on BLM land, currently used unofficially as a motocross track. And there was some interest and effort in getting that into the last Truckee Meadows Lands Bill. And of course, there is currently a Truckee Meadows Lands, Public Lands Management Act that is being looked at right now. And I would like to see that parcel be requested by Washoe County so that if it's transferred over, it could be managed by one of the motocross groups, very similar to how our archery range operates through an agreement. And I'm not sure if this is just something as simple as Mr. Solero just putting that request into the lands bill, or if we would need to, I'd be happy to arrange for a presentation at the next meeting on the benefits of that, or what would be the easiest way to proceed.
Yeah, Mr. Solaro, you can go ahead and answer that question.
All right, thanks. I wasn't quite 100% sure. I was supposed to catch your eye. For the record, Dave Solero, Sims County Manager. Certainly, we can bring an item back for this board to kind of vote on. You do have a little bit more authority now with Chapter 95. I do think it would be good to understand kind of the aspects. I have spoken with the group that is interested in this in the past, and we've talked to them about, it doesn't necessarily have to be Washoe County that does this. It could be done. We could help sponsor and do some other things. So certainly, if you've got some contacts, you want to bring maybe we could do a presentation from that group to really understand a little bit more how we fit in. I only say that because I'm a little leery on taking on more land when we've got issues with the land we've currently got and how we maintain that. So certainly open for anything, and that is a good avenues through the lands bill to see if we can pick up that parcel if it's something that would benefit all the parks users.
So would a presentation at the next meeting be good, or should I just talk to them and tell them to talk to you?
Yeah, I think if you could provide them my information, I'll work with staff to get something on the agenda.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other commissioner requests for agenda items, future agenda items? Okay. Perfect. And I guess we could always, if there's future ideas pop up, we can always bring them up at the next meeting for consideration. All right. Item 16, public comments.
No public comment.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 3:56. Thank you, everyone, for joining.